you mentioned discipleship. I know that's something that's important to you. What kind of initially got you passionate about that, and how do you, implement that in the leaders that you're leading?
Well, it got important because I was way more similar to Dudley so I worked at a sports bar, paying my way through Bible college, and nobody there knew Christ.
Yeah.
And I shared with them all, and had these great, I worked there for a long time, had some great opportunities, baptized, baptized this guy in a lightning storm, like legitimately a lightning storm. That's what they called it. I knew, so evangelism came easy. I have no problem. I don't have that I've developed it because, I don't want to be awkward, but I don't have that filter of I don't know, I don't like small talk unless it's like movies or music or books. So anyway, I've had no problem with evangelism. Discipleship, I didn't know how to do. And so when I became a youth pastor at that church in Missouri, they were all church kids, and I didn't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
And I don't think they knew what to do with me because our experiences growing up were so different. And I remember we'd been there less than a year. I came home. We'd been married for about a year. I came home and I cried. I legitimately cried, which is so silly. And my wife still loved me and thought I was attractive, ultimately, but not so much in the moment probably. But I cried and I'm like, I don't know how to disciple these kids. And I got this idea. I think I'm going to quit being a youth pastor. Like, I'm no good. And what I'll do is I'll work at bars and wherever, UPS, and I'll just bring people to Christ. And then once there's a bunch of people that know Jesus there, I'll leave and go to another job. Yeah. And my wife, in her great wisdom, said, well, if you really think that's what like the Lord has maybe put in you, what he might be leading you towards. My wife is way more spiritual than I am in terms of most things. But she said, but if this is just the emotional difficulty of not knowing how to disciple these kids, how about before you leave, you ask some older youth pastors, you read some books, like wisdom, right? And I'm
wisdom.
And I'm like, that's probably a good idea. So I did that. And there were some older youth pastors in town that really invested into me. And I read, I went to conferences, and I just poured into, and I still remember one of the books that still to this day, I use something from it with leaders. It's called Shaping the Spiritual Lives of Students. It was written by Richard Dunn, D-U-N-N. And it was like half academic, half like youth ministry. So good though. And written in the mid-90s. And he talks about pacing with. He has this chart that I still use in training, and Brianne uses now with youth leaders. And it's like you either tell them or you pace with them. If you tell them, then philosophically, and it's way more smart than what I'm regurgitating. But he said, people that want to tell, they use small groups to transfer information. People that want to pace with use small groups to gather information about the kid. People that want to tell, they want to tell students what they should be thinking, feeling, and doing. People that pace with are going to ask good questions to find out what the kid is actually thinking. And it's so much more.
That's cool.
And so that's what I began to pace with these middle school and high school kids, most of whom knew more about the Bible than I did in those early days. And I got, I'd say good, not great at it. And so by the time I came to Shepherd, I felt like I could do both. I was always able to connect with kids that didn't know Christ. I was a football coach in Missouri. Like, that's how bad their program was. I was the head freshman football coach for like 3 years at a public high school because their program was so bad. The head coach was like, "Hey man, you used to play football. You want to?" And I was good with kids, and so I think that's what he was looking for. But I didn't know what I was doing. It's terrible, but it was also great. Yeah. But in terms of how I train now, pacing is still the phrase, right? So like, we don't need preachers. Like we tell, when we interview people that want to be D group leaders, we call our small groups for middle school and high school D groups, discipleship groups. They already get sermons by people that are really good at preaching. And not that you're not good, right? But they already get that. We need people to be like a second voice, like assuming they have godly parents. We want you to be a second voice to that, but we want you to mentor them. We want you to listen. We make the groups only 7. It's not a magic number. It's just the one we chose. We don't want them to be too big. And the best of the best, we tell them, like, we know not all small group leaders can do this. You're a volunteer. But if you can go to their games, if you can take them for a Coke, and of course it's 2021, so we do the whole you make sure the parents are cool with that, and all, But it's spending time with. It's asking good questions. I used to tell leaders the movie Hoosiers. Gene Hackman told them you have to pass the ball 4 times before you shoot. Right. This was something I made for myself and then used it to train because I'm a teller by nature.
Yeah.
So I had to work everything I'm good at with discipleship. I had to work really hard. And so I would ask 4 questions before I would. So I would ask a kid. It could be in a group of kids, but I would ask this kid a question, and based on what they'd say, I'd ask a follow up. And then and it was really difficult by the way to ask 4 before I'd go. Whatever, hey, here's what I think. Now, it could be an encouragement. I might say, bro, that's really cool. But I disciplined myself before I even did that to just go, that's really interesting. What about, and whatever, I'd ask questions. So there's like that's not a real well thought out answer, but there's
but I love that. I love that practical step because I think babe, would you say that I'm a teller? I'm definitely a teller. Big talker over here.
Yes, me too.
I love teaching, and definitely that does not come naturally to me. The more I think discipleship, which it does to her. So great.
Yeah, ditto. My wife's the same way.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, so empathetic.
Yeah.
I mean, she feels the person's pain and therefore has I think a natural insight, and that might be why we struggle with it. I don't want to psychoanalyze too much, but and you need all kinds, but I'm a verbal processor. And so as long as I've filled now I'm 45, and so I've got some years, but as long as I've filled my soul and my mind with some good wisdom beyond myself, I can regurgitate that as I'm talking, right? So there is a need for telling, but man, especially with kids. And then there's all the cliches, right? Yeah. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? And so I had to work through that.
Totally.
Because my thing was, in my arrogance was, I know what you need to hear, bro. Here's what you need to do. Just listen and do it. Yeah. But if he doesn't know or she doesn't know I love them, I'm with you. I'm a teller.
That's awesome.